European Parliament, the Commission, and now in the Council. Well, I think that we should make an additional effort really not to separate the different arguments, because when we talk about solidarity, the transformative power of enlargement, that means business case, that means new opportunities for business, for investment, how we can increase the attractiveness. And for me, enlargement in that case, it's always shared values. We need to talk about this because it's something that we share in this difficult world, rule of law, democracy. It's also our capacity to respond to global challenges. That's enlargement. That's what we need to address. Okay, what are those global challenges? How we can tackle them? I think that we can immediately have some examples, and it's not only digitalization, it's not only climate, it's energy, it's infrastructure, it's young people, it's the region development. And of course, for me, that means concrete benefits for citizens. If we make an additional effort just to give much more visibility to the success stories, if we show to our citizens that on a daily basis, in their daily life, there are benefits, we'll be much more able to convince them. So I think that on one side, we have always to put a little bit more visibility on the strengths. On the other side, of course, there are challenges, because what is the alternative? I think that there is no alternative, but we need to address the challenges. And these challenges are internal, both for EU and the countries that would like to be members of the European Union. In that case, I must say that we need to address some of the internal reforms that we need in the European Union. But please don't start again to talk about changing the treaties before answering to what we would like to achieve, because there will be change. I think that we need to change the approach, because I remember some discussions many years ago, and at the same time to show to our partners that the own merit principle is an important one, and we can be there to support them. For that, again, I think that we need both to make some efforts and to show the concrete benefits to our citizens. That's the best way for me to convince them. And we have examples. When I was Digital Commissioner, that was the regional roaming agreement. That was so an important step. Now we have the innovation agenda. There is so many young, talented people in the region. Digital innovation hubs, how they are working in deep tech or in fintech. I think that we need really now to talk a little bit more, and much more, I must say, on this positive side.
So we're communicating more and better in this case on some of the examples. Christian Levin, let's communicate on some of your examples there. Scania has a unique perspective to contribute, because your company invested heavily in some of those 2004 accession countries, like Poland, for example, and now maintains significant business operations in the largest candidate country, in Ukraine. What are some of the advantages a global European company like Scania was able to gain back from that 2004 enlargement, and what risks and opportunities for European businesses do you see in the current range of candidate countries?
Yeah, look, Scania is a global company, but we are also very European. We have, let's say, 50% of our customers are European-based, 75% of our suppliers are European-based. If we think about our factory footprint, it's in France, it's in the Netherlands, it's in Poland, and it's in Sweden. So also a big part of the manufacturing footprint is in Europe. And we are completely dependent on the European transport system. So it's a kind of a dependence that we have, interdependence that we have. Our experience then from 2004, or actually we can go further back, because we started to invest in Eastern and Central Europe around about 30 years ago. And Poland is an interesting case, where we have set up both manufacturing, our own workshop structure, and really follow the customer's development as Poland has developed. And it's super interesting to see, if we only take since 2004, the Polish economy, if I'm rightly informed, has grown about 3 times since then. Our sales of vehicles to Poland and the total Polish market has increased 5 times. If we look to our services sales, which is so important for the profitability of a company supplying trucks, has increased 10 times. So that's just giving you the magnitude. And the Polish hauliers today, with more than 1 million vehicles, are dominating the European haulage industry. Polish drivers extremely important to keep Europe rolling. And Ukrainian drivers, we saw when they were moving back after the full-scale invasion of Russia, when they were moving back to defend their country, there was a shock to the European manufacturing system because we were suddenly lacking 30,000 Ukrainian drivers. So there are a lot of parallels also when you look size-wise, and we are in Ukraine also since 30 years. Mm-hmm. We have our own workshops, our own importership, our own head office there. And we see no reason why Ukraine could not follow and be a future Poland from our point of view. And we can only encourage other private companies to take the advantage to come to Ukraine and invest in Ukraine already now. We, as an example, are doing our best year ever. We did our best year ever, 2023, in Ukraine, based on the huge need of transport that is coming, partly because of the war and partly because of the development. As part of the EU, I think we would see this development not only for Ukraine, but we would see it for Montenegro, we would see it for other countries joining the EU in a very similar manner. And I think that's where I started. I mean, free trade creates growth and it creates prosperity. And that's, of course, based on competition. And some of the new markets here in the EU are very competitive. And that's good for us.
Well, that's the question, right? It is good. But yet, could it be tricky then, also with some of the challenges of their competitiveness?
Well, you could see that as a challenge, or you could see that as an opportunity. I see that as an opportunity. I think it's very good for us. You were, in your opening speech, you were saying something about Europe's productivity. We are lacking or lagging in productivity development compared to many Asian markets, and notably China. I think it would be very good for us to have a bit of a more internal competition in Europe. I think we have become a little bit fat and happy, and you see productivity coming down as a result. So Hungary, new member states, internal competition in the free trade zone of the EU, I think would be very good for us.
Well, let's go here. Let's go to Ukraine now, please. Rostislav Shurma, Deputy Head of the Office of the President of Ukraine. Ukraine's enthusiasm for EU membership has put enlargement somehow back to the top of the political agenda. Now, Ukraine is, however, the largest and the most populous candidate country after Turkey, and is fighting the war of aggression for almost 2 years now with a full-scale invasion. So some EU voters in member states will be concerned about whether the EU can, so to say, digest Ukraine easily. What do you have to say about that? Also, given what Christian Levin just said about, in many cases, companies already working.
Mm-hmm. Frankly speaking, I've heard from Christian more about opportunities rather than challenges, and more about the stimulus for the competition. So if you compare us with the other previous entrants, let's take Poland, for example, which was mentioned before. Ukraine is quite comparable in terms of population and in terms of the square of the territory. It's not times different, it's like dozens of % different. And the European Union was much smaller when they took Poland and they digested it. So I think this won't be a problem. The second, I think we should focus on the synergies. For the last 7 decades, I think we forgot that peace and security, this is not for granted. Because we had a very good period of continuous development, maybe with some financial pauses, but it was continuously growing and improving the quality of life of people. But then something happened that nobody of us in the civilized world could imagine. Please imagine that in your country, some other country comes in. What it will mean for your citizens. And it happens so that Ukraine has what to contribute in the EU about the security, about the defense, about the military tech. Because even now, if we even look at the Ukrainian battlefield and we need to supply the armors and ammunitions, the European defense industry and military tech industry is not ready even to supply, not even to replace the warehouses, but just to supply the current needs. And we have this industry, and this is not our industry. This is the industry for the defense and security for the whole European Union. Another thing is about the economic synergies. The first is about the markets, because the new entrants, and what I already told, that the big country like Ukraine, like the Montenegro and other potential new entrants, this is a big market for many companies. And at the same time, this is a very good contribution to manufacturing, to the domestication of some resources of the value chains. Because on the example of Ukraine, we do understand that we have people, very skilled, very well educated people, and you know what is, the the cost of bringing up the qualified engineer in the European Union. It's, I think, close from 500,000 to 1 million euro to bring up the person from the birth to qualified engineer. And Ukraine has millions of those guys. And second, we have natural resources, which the European Union lacks at the moment. If you take the list of the critical minerals, iron ore, the biggest deposits and the biggest production of iron ore. Lithium, that we already mentioned during the discussion, the second biggest deposit in Europe. Graphite, the first biggest deposit. Manganese, and I think titanium, the biggest deposits in the world. So this is what we will contribute into the whole European Union. Oil and gas, the biggest deposits, and renewable potential for the renewables, for the onshore wind, for the territory, for the solar. So it will definitely make the whole system stronger and more sustainable. So I would look at this as a long-term business project where you get the very decent return investing in the development of those territories. For the first period, I think the model might be that there'll be the flow of high-end equipment to the new countries with the supplies of commodities from those countries, because we are quite competitive in this. For example, the cheapest green steel that can be produced in the European continent is the green steel produced in Ukraine. You cannot find any other country that can compete at least at 10 to 20% in the cost difference. And for the commodities, what matters only the cost. The same is about the agri-products and others. But then it will equalize the salaries, the cost, and the system will normalize. But anyway, this will be highly beneficial as a general project for the EU.
Yeah, and yet it's a very long process as well. Prime Minister Spejdic, now most of the Western Balkans countries have been somehow stuck in this process in the waiting room for like an entire generation when you think of that. This is a very long period of time. Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine has injected this new momentum into the accession process. And your country, Montenegro, is specifically seen as one of the best performing candidate countries in the neighborhood. Now, what economic arguments do you use to make your case in Brussels for a speedier accession process?
Somebody who comes from a private sector like myself, it was pretty puzzling to see a situation that Montenegro and some other countries from the Western Balkans and the wider region, we lack that economic connection with the EU, actually. So when I became a technocrat minister of finance in 2020, we inherited a country that was infrastructure was fully built by the companies, financiers out of the EU. The main tourists, as a tourist country that receives millions of tourists every year, the main tourists were coming out of Russia. Then we had investors coming almost exclusively out of EU countries. So then, you know, and we are geographically, we are very close to the geographical center of Europe. So we are using euro as a currency. We are like, etc., etc. So it's very strange. We are surrounded by European Union. So it's very strange to have such a country. We did a lot to change that. So now a number of Russian tourists became like 7 or 8%. So it's way less, and dependence on the Russian market for tourism became much more replaceable than it used to be before. Dependence decreased massively. Now the infrastructure, finally, we signed with EIB a big investment deal on our railways within Montenegro. So that was the first time ever that we get like such a big investment from Europe. Then with the private market, obviously, with the EU growth plan, what I tell to the EU guys is like, hey, it's not about that. Montenegro's finances are pretty healthy. We have 60% debt over GDP. Our like fiscal deficit within the Maastricht criteria. So we can finance most of the things ourselves. But the EU growth plan is so important because it's such a strong signal to the private sector. You know, like we have Mr. Levin here to testify to that notion that, you know, the private sector oftentimes follows the strategic direction. So the geopolitics, as I said, Montenegro used to be more like Mongolia or Kazakhstan in terms of the economic structure, but then we were like geopolitically or strategically Brussels. So that discrepancy doesn't work long term. So if you want to be If you want to be part of the club, you have to be both economy and value-based. So I think this is the winning combination, and I really think that EU has to step up their game, and I think they're doing it, finally, and I'm happy to see that. I said before, even for the bigger countries, there's absolutely a great case for why they should be for EU enlargement. We said that increasing the market, increasing the competitiveness, getting some of the things that they don't have in EU, some of the edge, especially Ukraine has fantastic representation that we just heard about. So I think Montenegro, as a small country, I mean, like maybe we don't have such a big, fantastic market, but it is a market that is euroized. Like we use euros, we are there, and we were not part of the bigger EU market, which is kind of unbelievable, frankly. So we are going through a process. We are going to have a big investment cycle in the next 5 to 6 years in Montenegro. We expect EU companies and EU finance and EU's infrastructure vehicles to be much more active than they used to be before. And we are ready for that. And I think EU is finally ready. So this is a good time to talk about these kind of things.
Now, about EU being finally ready, this is something I wanted to ask you. When you say the EU has to step up, for the countries that for a while, as your country, have been trying and waiting in that room for the European Union, for the enlargement process, we somehow have heard much more Western Europe leading the enlargement discussions over the past decade or decades. Should Eastern Europe, Central Europe, Balkans have a rather more equal saying and weigh into more that? The time has come for that. And I'm asking this question also specifically because we are 6 months before the European Parliament elections.
So it's difficult to look from the perspective of somebody who's not in the EU. So,
that's fine.
And I don't want to step on anybody's toes as well. But that said, I think it's the point of EU is like about balance and mutual understanding and finding compromise. There is this beautiful concept in Japan. I'm coming back to, again, Japanese concepts. I think we can learn a lot from them. There's a concept of ba. Concept of ba is a really good one, that you can add value to the table without destroying the harmony of the table. So that is something that, oftentimes, especially in Southern Europe, we like to add value and we like to be boasting about that value, and then we want to sometimes a bit disturb the harmony for the sake of disturbing the harmony. I think we can, culturally, I think we could adjust a little bit that stuff and become a bit more of a Japanese in that sense, and adding more value without destroying the harmony. And this concept, I think, could help us achieve more consensus, and we could progress faster on many issues that are being discussed now in Europe, and many reforms that are being discussed now.
Thank you. Mr. Schum, what's your take on that? Do you think that if for Eastern and Central Europe to play a strong and bigger role when it comes to the EU strategy towards enlargement, that would help the case for Ukraine?
Not sure. Initially, I think there were the whole signs, because when the war started, I think that the Eastern European countries, and they were the strongest backers of joining Ukraine. But in fact, the last half a year, you see what's going on with the Ukrainian agri-products was blocking the borders. I think this is the case when the niche problems start impact the domestic politics, and the politicians, instead of standing strong in principle, they try to adopt to the small trends in the society and accelerate this to the geopolitical things, which result to quite bad things. So I wouldn't say that, coming back to your question, that there will be fundamental difference. Overall, we feel the very strong support now as in ever of the core countries of the EU, like the Germany, like the France, like Italy, that are basically the core supporters. And we have seen this changing position of not every Eastern European, because the Bulgaria was quite, I would say, quite strong, but some of the European countries, in fact, Eastern European countries, have changed a little bit. You know what countries I'm referring to, their position, but I believe that the European values and the long-term strategic vision will win in this.
Marika, yeah, let me, because I also want to, I would love you to comment on that,
yeah.
but if I may add just before you do, this is very interesting. How do we bring these business benefits into bigger, make it more important, also given Bulgaria's position when it comes to the Black Sea?
Well, I don't agree that first we are talking about Western Balkans because of Russia. It's simply not true. Remember the Bulgarian presidency of the Council, the Western Balkans Summit in 2018. For the first time, again, the Western Balkans were on the top of the European agenda. And after we already have seen the digital agenda, innovation agenda, the new growth plan that is we have now, we have really now a huge investment. And I think that we should definitely here see how all together we can advance. Second, I must say that following my personal experience, when we have our foreign affairs ministerial meetings, it's always Central and Eastern Europe talking about enlargement, Western Balkans and Ukraine. It's me, it's my colleague from Slovenia, from Croatia. And I think that even sometime when we have some tensions, it's important to discuss. And I think that some of the reactions are because we have our experience and we don't want to see other countries with the feeling to be treated like second category of citizens. And I think that we should learn from the previous enlargement. I'm giving the example of Bulgaria, what that means, mechanism of cooperation, verification for more than 10 years, just that was ended last year. That's important, rule of law, democracy, but let's work since the very beginning. And I think, again, Bulgaria and Romania are not in Schengen. Why? All the technical criteria are fulfilled since 11 years. I think that sometime we should take a little bit of time and to discuss about this, because some of the reactions are not only internally motivated. They are because we would like somehow to anticipate and not to have the same attitude that we felt somehow during the years. And the other argument that I would like to use, we must stay much more focused to show how we can transform the challenges into opportunities. Bulgaria stopped the ban for the export of the Ukrainian grain. That was not an easy decision. 3 days, all farmers on the street. But we managed to explain to them that that's an extraordinary opportunity to increase the connectivity in this part of Europe, to talk about infrastructure, rail system or roads, and that means much more benefits for markets, for companies, for citizens. It's not easy, but I think that's why I'm not sure that we started again to talk about Western Balkans because only of the Russian aggression in Ukraine. I think that because we started finally not to talk only about chapters, Montenegro, I always remember the numbers, for many years we are talking about this, we started to talk about competitiveness, infrastructure, regions, young people, perspectives, security, independence, sovereignty, strategic choice. I think that that's why now we have a change of the agenda, and that was somehow a little bit prepared.
And you think this change of the agenda will actually
Yes.
get even bigger and...
Absolutely. But that's the right way. We should continue in this direction. Otherwise, we'll not be able to convince our citizens and their citizens that we are together, because we'll become much stronger if we are together.
We will open the floor to the questions, but first I want Christian Levin, for you to comment on that. You see, we have really different perspectives here, but then it all comes to this balance and weighing in the economic, the business benefits as we discussed, but then also we still have this huge political base on the case that is happening. And of course, with the current geopolitical situation, it's even more disputable than ever. You know, at the same time, there is more attention, for sure, for the countries that do want to join the European Union, and yet how to change that focus even bigger, how to make it more on the business advantages and economic advantages for both sides. That's what I'm trying to get there, not just for the countries who want to.
I'm not sure. That's a super complex question, of course. But what we've seen over the last year is that globalization is moving in the wrong direction, and free trade is becoming a scarce resource. And now we see a chance to expand the home territory. What is EU? What all European-based companies are depending upon. Then I think it's really a pity not to take that chance, provided, of course, that the criteria are fulfilled, etc. There's no reason to trail. In this geopolitical challenged environment, or this mess that we are in, I think we open up a great opportunity. So I refuse to see this as a problem, because there are no trace. I mean, all of these problems have been overcome in the expansion of EU previously. There are also very few free trade agreements that have shown up to be non-profitable for both sides. So yes, there are challenges. I understand the political dimension, but from a business point of view, I can only continue to argue, and I will always argue for free trade wherever there is an opportunity. We must go for it, and now it's more important than ever.
Yeah. Well, and yet, almost 20 years since the last big.
Yeah. So it's about time.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Let's take a few questions from the audience. Could you please raise your hand, and we're going to pass you the microphone if you've got a question. Our lovely colleagues here, if you could, we have a question there, please. Yeah, just here in the middle, please, sir. Fine, thank you.
Hello, my name is Renata Pinchova. I'm a global shipper from Skopje Hub, Macedonia. Thank you very much for your insights. I would like to add, actually, regarding the EU enlargement process. So we saw that actually some countries needed to make compromises with their collective memory just to start this process. And now we see that actually it was maybe more for the geopolitical interest of EU. So my question, it will be, what do you think? How long does the process of solving the internal challenges in the European Union will take? And thus now we have the original idea of EU when it was founded, because now we see that we have many crises that we felt, we as a young people, and how we will change that for our future generations. Because now the young people are scared for the future, and thus EU promises the bright future for the young people from the whole region. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
please.
Well, I will react very, very rapidly. I think that first we should use even the opportunities that we have now before arriving to all the answers for how we'll reform European Union, because this debate will be a crucial one the next few months. But we have examples. We can work with countries that are candidates even within the actual framework. And I'm giving the example of Erasmus Plus program. I think that everyone is aware what is Erasmus Plus. And when I was European Commissioner responsible for education, I managed to have an enhanced partnership with the Western Balkans. So now students are participating with the same rights like member states in our European Universities Alliances initiative, with our teachers' academies, with our innovative universities. I think that first we need much more examples like this one in order to provide and to give this hope and this conviction that we are able to do it. The other thing is, I think that the next only 2-3 months, we don't have so much time. European elections are in the month of June. We need now clear answers. What about the progressive integration? We already have seen that it's quite difficult to have the whole process, and so you are asking that this process is moving very rapidly. Okay, if it's yes, from where we are starting? It's good that at the heart we have our values, democracy, rule of law, but what's next? I think that that's what we need to address. Otherwise, I think that that's a real threat again to start to talk about changing the treaty, talking about the seats and how many countries will take the power in the European Parliament, in the European institutions. I definitely need discussions like the examples that I already shared with you, much more than the general one.
Yep.
Yes, I'm not a big expert in European bureaucracy and decision-making, but I'll try to look at this from the different perspective, what we experienced as a country on ourselves for the last 2 years. We feel that now, this decade, starting now, is a time for strong leaders and bold decisions. Why is that? Because we all have been a bit relaxed for the recent decades of the normal, comfortable life and gradual development and growth of the world. But unfortunately, quite nearby, we have the regimes who really want to test and challenge the existing world order and really to change the powers, to change the value, to change the flows, everything. This is what really in their heads. It's difficult for us to imagine even that, but those people in those countries, like Russia, like Iran, like North Korea, and maybe some others, they are thinking literally like that. And if they see on the other side of the table too slow, too balanced leaders, they'll move step after step. So it's a time to take the bold and strong decisions, and EU expansion, we believe, is one of them, which really can stop and preserve the normal development of the world.
Would we have more questions? Would you raise your... Yes, please. And then we're going to comment here on this.
Hello, I totally concur with Maria and with CEO of Scania. We are similar. We are investors from Czech Republic, small country, and we are large investor in Southeast Europe. And it doesn't make any sense that Bulgaria is not in Schengen or Montenegro in the European Union, of course, the Ukraine as well. And you are absolutely right that in this complicated world, that it's complicated to have a free trade between Europe and United States or Europe and Asia. So it's absolutely sensible to have one commonality with Montenegro, Bulgaria and Ukraine. It's good for us as investors and as a business. And sometimes I do believe that we as a Central and Eastern Europeans, we need to take matters in our hands. I agree with you that Brussels and Washington are sometimes too far away. And I think that you as a public official, not only from European Commission, but now in the Council, it would make sense to bring countries of Central and Eastern Europe more together, like not only Visegrad and Bucharest 9, but I think this would be my message from investors' perspective.
Thank you. Let's. I'm going to go for the questions. We have a question behind. Yes, please. Could you? Thank you.
Hi, Ian Lindsay, previously British ambassador to Hungary and previously an advisor to the Romanian government during the accession process. Britain benefited massively from the enlargement of the European Union in 2004, and then with Bulgaria and Romania joining the European Union. Despite that, Britain then made the strategic error of voting to leave the European Union. How are you going to persuade sceptical populations in Western Europe of the benefits, and I completely agree with the economic benefits you've talked about, of widening, expanding the European Union? I think that's the political problem, Christian, that you mentioned, is massive, and that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, you're right, and probably we as business leaders need to step up and kind of teach the population why free trade is so good. I think we've taken that perhaps for granted for too long a time, and we've become comfortable, and we have forgotten how much value that is actually created. And I mean, to your thinking also, we need good examples, and there are so many good examples. My example out of Poland is just one. I can do that out of Bulgaria, out of Lithuania. But in the end, I mean, this has, of course, created more jobs in Sweden or in France or in the Netherlands, where we happen to have our industrial footprint. But equally, it has created opportunities for suppliers in the expanded parts of Europe. So there is only winners, and we probably need to help. It's not our job, perhaps, primarily as business, to help politicians to explain the good things about an expanded EU, but probably we need to step up, because it's to the benefit of all.
Please, yeah.
Maybe I can add to that point. Despite the fact that the UK is out of EU, and we miss you dearly because you were a big proponent of EU integration of the Western Balkans and Eastern Europe in general, and with the strategic vision that your country and the leadership that your country always possessed. Now, in the times of Russian aggression, actually, we have ever close ties with UK as a security, foreign policy, and a defense partner. I'm talking from Montenegrin perspective, like we discuss, maybe sometimes even closer than some of the EU member states. So, you know, I don't think this is irreversible process. We will see where it goes to. I hope that we will have UK have a closer relationship with the EU for starters, have markets, you know, like to be more combined, and to have a bigger economy of scale. So that's the first step, I think, the next first step.
If I may add, rule of law, anti-corruption, independence of the judicial system. we need to talk about this. I think that we should now stick to this as heart of the European project. Those countries have to show their wish really to respect this, because that means predictability, certainty. We can build confidence. And after, to bring much more companies to be vocal and to talk, because I already gave the example with Austria, but Austria is the second largest direct investor in Bulgaria, of more than 5 billion per year. But it's now that the companies started to talk that they are doing good business, and it's important to have Bulgaria in Schengen. I think that we need much more examples like this one.
Can I ask you briefly to comment? Because they're going to be the final. I have to wrap up the session, I'm afraid. So your final comments, please, on this, on the question that was asked.
I think a couple of dimensions. Obviously, the necessary reforms should be done and accomplished, but if we check what really bothers the potential companies' investments in Ukraine, this is not even about the regulatory environment. This is about the military risks and access to the markets. This is 90% of the components of decision-making. That's why, ultimately, this is about the leadership and about the bold decisions, rather than technical procedures. This is how we look at this.
Thank you so much. Rostislav Shurma, Deputy Head of the Office of the President of Ukraine, Miloj Kosparic, Prime Minister of Montenegro, Maria Gabriel, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Foreign Affairs of Bulgaria, and Christian Levin, President and Chief Executive Officer at Scania. Thank you very much to the speakers and to the audience. That's all we have time for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.